As fires burn out from yesterday, a wandering mare's found a better way. For just as night seems most dark, the sunrise comes to warm our hearts.
Through the ashes of war, through the blood and the gore, a man who wants more than this world that is torn. A group that cannot just be stopped or forgot will rise to overcome all odds. And with every new day, through the parts that we play, as we push fear away and remember the ways of a man who was kind and whose words will remind. Do better.
Chapter 11. A Tale of Heartwarming in Fall at Equestria. Even war must take a break on Christmas to abide by the rules of decency, at the very least, sir. Winston Churchill, 1914, on the winter trenches. Out on the field, we arose to a clatter. I sprang from my sleeping bag to see what was the matter. Shotgun drawn in a flash, I scanned over the terrain and threw on my saddlebag sash.
Damn it all to hell, Chifundo! I swear I'm not sure if the dreamless night makes up for me waking up with these rhymes in my head.
In the field was some sort of vehicle that looked like a vertibird gyrocopter, had a child with a rocket sled and a driver's seat of a pony-drawn carriage. My eyes were drawn to the hulking figure that I swore was Buddy, working on the strange contraption.
Oh, great! The fuel element is out!
He shouted out in a voice that was a mixture of a giant sapient gummy bear and an alguacil with an even rougher smoker's croak.
At least that's what I think Alguacil would sound like if he smoked and if he also was a giant lump of sentient gelatin sugar.
The rest of the group had scrambled up, weapons drawn, and began to stare into the night with frantic effort to figure out what all the racket was about. I put the shotgun to its holster while my tail secured it.
I can't believe I've gotten used to my tail doing things on its own or predicting what it would do.
Even while all my friends kept the firearm trained on the hulking creature, I trotted over to the sand-dog without hesitation. He was wearing a big, bright red leather jacket and even had a sock hat on with a white furball bell at the end. It even rang with a cheer you would think a filly with a new toy would have when he bobbed his head over the sled's engine.
Hello? Are you okay?
I started to speak, and he turned around with a start. His fur was bright white with a rosy red cheek, and he was rather fat for a sand dog. At least in comparison to Buddy, the only sand dog I've ever known up close. He looked rather soft and had a fat little belly, which, when he turned to face me, it shook, even jiggled, like a bowl full of jelly.
Okay, you know what, Chifundo? I hate you right now. So much. I really, truly hate how much of your speech pattern has infected my mind.
You're Wandering Sunrise. That's Nyota coming up from your left. Chifundo too. Each of you double-checked as nice. Even if you recently adopted some colorful language. Sunrise.
He paused, as his gaze fell over corners. She was inching forward, the metal box shifting over the ground almost sheepishly, as the sand dog's gaze leveled on her.
Sugar Cube Corners. Naughty list. You tried so hard at times, only to disappoint me.
I could hear a sniffle coming from on the corner's box as the sand dog's word cut her to the bone. Even I felt slightly wounded by the way he spoke to Boxbone. If the sand dog noticed, he paid it no mind, as he went back to working on his vehicle, which was loaded with velvet red bags stuffed with colorful wrapped presents beyond their capacity.
Quick Stitch, come on, let's give him a hoof.
I said, looking at the olive green stallion in the dark. We approached, and my pitbuck light caught on with a soft click. The glow of light was enough to make it almost as bright as my father's workshop with flood lighting, or a high noonday. My legs trotted over to the sand dog, while my tail pulled out a set of working tools wrapped in leather.
Where did I get this again? Why do I keep pulling stuff out of this backpack that I still haven't taken an inventory of? Some pony explain this to me! So you know who we are somehow. What is your name?
I asked, as I crawled under the machine and motioned for Quickstitch to pass me a screwdriver.
I'm Santa Claus. I have to make a trip to see all the good foals and bad ponies tonight.
He replied with a deep, jolly laugh that seemed to quake not only his belly, but my hoofs as well. He seemed entirely nonplussed by my incredulous look, staring back at me with his bright eyes. I would have asked him if he was serious, when I saw what looked like rainbow fluid slowly leaking from one of the rocket pots.
Rainbow fluid? That doesn't make any sense. That shouldn't be there. Hey, Quickstitch, what fluid is this?
I had never seen it in a vehicle, or ever, for that matter, and my pitbuck started clicking anytime it got close to me. I felt two hoofs grabbing me by the flanks, one hoof on my cutie mark, and one on a much more sensitive section of my haunches. And with a sudden yank, I was pulled from under the vehicle. I tumbled from under the vehicle with all the grace of a bulldozer smashing into a skyscraper.
Hey, what?
Sunrise, that is taint, and it is the last thing you want to be exposed to.
Quickstitch had a look of wide-eyed and heart-pounding fear plastered to his face. I heard Alguacil cock back the hammer of his revolver as Nyota dropped his combat stance next to me, facing off against Sandy.
Whoa! Let's not be hasty, Alguacil. I can explain to all of you exactly why there is taint in my vehicle.
His speech made it look like his stomach jiggled, and it reminded me that this was the first fat person I had met in the wasteland.
Sunrise, it's awfully nice of you to offer to help, but let me close off that fuel valve, and then you two can get under and take another look.
Your vehicle is fueled by taint!
Nyota shouted at the top of his lungs. I looked from Nyota's confused features to Quickstitch concerned ones to Alguacil's razor-sharp, angry glare.
Does he ever have an emotion other than angry? All right, justice. Angry justice.
And back to Santa Claus.
What is taint?
There was a giggle from the box.
Stable dwellers don't know anything.
Corners declared and continued to snicker while I looked at everyone for an answer.
Sunrise, don't get exposed to it. You think radiation is bad, taint is so much worse and not something you ever want to touch.
Quickstitch explained while looking up at the sand dog indignantly. I looked to the red and white dressed creature as he worked a wrench.
He's right, Sunrise. But I have invented a way to use it for rocket fuel.
There was one more turn of his wrench and a slight hiss that cut off abruptly.
There we go. Now get under there and take a look.
I crawled back under and took a look. There was a small pool of rainbow fluid on the ground with turpentine bleeding out around it. In addition to this, I could see where the rocket had blown a set of caskets that had made them useless for keeping our propellant sealed. There were significant amounts of rainbow fluid leaking around them, even after the fuel line was shut off. I grabbed a wrench and started my work. It was difficult going, avoiding the rainbow fluid and having Quickstitch hand me the tools as I needed. Screws were tightened, lug nuts were reset to their best positions, connectors undone, checked, oiled, and reconnected. I even took a moment to examine the transmission and could tell it was from a vertibuck.
I haven't even fixed a vertibuck before, but it turns out labels are a thing, and this is labeled with a hover setting gear.
Once I had done all the work, I took the stock of the rocket exhaust and slid out.
Alright, well, I've got all the work done that I can for minor repairs and preventative maintenance.
I took a breath as Neora moved to dust me off and fussed over how dirty I had gotten under there. I returned the last pieces to the tool belt while my tailor rolled it up and put everything away.
But it really is gonna need 2 brand new rocket tubes if you want that to work again. Also, some wonder glue to attach them and scrap metal to remold the parts to fit.
Damn it! I knew I blew out the rocket element!
He kicked his vehicle on the driver's side door.
And now what am I going to do to get the rest of these presents delivered? It's Heartwarming's Eve, and Santa Claus isn't coming to town.
He continued his threatening rant as he stomped around his vehicle, starting to check for anything that would work as a rocket exhaust.
All the foals will be so disappointed in me.
I looked at my pipbuck, and the pony on it was wearing a festive hat and swinging a tiny bell with the pipbuck graphic for snowfall landing around the pipmare. The date was right. 12:03 a.m. December 24, 259 CE.
Wow, it really is Heartwarming Eve, 182 years after the bombs fell. But every pony knows Sandy Claus is something you just make up for little blank flanks.
Yes, Sunrise, it is Sandy Claus, and you need to help him save Heartwarming. Get to it. Go out and find Sandy Claus some new rockets so he can make his deliveries.
Pink shouted out with glee, dressed in a fluffy red and white coat, complete with festive sock hat and a big white curly beard.
Oh, you have got to be... This is the wasteland. Some sand dog has taken upon himself to pretend to be Sandy Claus and is going around delivering presents. There is no way this can be bad. Assuming he recognizes good ponies from bad ones the same way we do? Well, he did say Corners was on the naughty list.
That I did, Sunrise.
The sand dog called back to me with his back turned as he kept going through parts in his toolkit. Every pony looked at me, then to Sandy Claus, then back to me. I let out a sigh.
It can wait till morning, can't it?
I yawned tiredly, wanting to curl back up in my Stable 43 sleeping bag and get a few more winks.
By then, it will be too late. No, I need the rockets tonight.
He paused his speech and took out a set of mugs. The sand dog poured them full of a sweet, berry-smelling black liquid and passed them out.
Keep the mugs, and this should wake all of you up.
I took another smell of the liquid and lifted my pipbuck up to it. It smelled harmless enough, and my pipbuck didn't click when placed near it. I took a sip and instantly wanted more. As the liquid hit my tongue, it was like an orgy of mountain berries meeting the spring cherries, all covered in the sweet, caffeinated nectar of Celestia's own brew. Within moments of ingesting the full mug of the magical brew, everything lifted. The fog of fatigue from my too little sleep was cleared from my mind, as if Celestia was shining her light with god rays to the spot my hoof stood upon. I have to admit, even my saddlebags felt lighter. Neora was talking to Santa Claus about what we had drank when my pipbuck lit up. The map function was activated and showed me the exact location of Ranger Station 18 inside the White-tailed Woods. I blinked a few times, wondering how it knew where that was, or why it was seamlessly that close to our location. I looked up at Alquasil, then Quickstitch.
Do you think there might be some spare rockets there?
The Griffin thumbed his revolver back from cocked and holstered it away, but kept his gaze on the sand dog and his talon ready to draw.
Can you not be in the fresh off the train to the Badlands mode for once in your life?
Alquasil shrugged.
Maybe. Might have been picked clean decades ago. Either way, there's probably at least some good scrap there.
Quickstitch nodded to me.
I mean, your pit book has led us to exactly where we needed to go so far.
He placed a hoof on my shoulder, then used it to bring my attention up to his honey-colored eyes.
If you think we should help him and your pit buck is right, then I say we follow it.
I stared at Quickstitch. He was being extremely nice to us for someone brand new.
Wait, since when am I... Yeah, right. DJ Pone 3 had labeled me the leader, and I really had to ask him in person one day how he had survived for 180 plus years like I have. I am completely way too young for... Nope, that excuse doesn't fly anymore. It is step up now, Sunrise, or don't. They will follow. I will look into this mystic of stable dwellers later. Sandy Claus, we'll go to the ranger station and see if we can find something to replace your rockets.
Sandy Claus turned and gave us the warmest smile.
You have to make your deliveries after all. It wouldn't be fair if everyone woke up and found out the angel with a shotgun refused to help save Heartwarming.
He chuckled once again as I blushed.
Well, at least I've accepted my title now. Baby steps, right? Yesterday I was being blown up by landmines. Today I'm working to save Heartwarming for all the little good fillies and colts.
Well then, be safe and be quick. Tonight, it's not Rudolph who's my guiding light, but it's the sunrise. Ho, 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 ho.
He chuckled wholeheartedly. We headed off to the east towards the point lit up on my Pip-Bug EFS. The green marker dot was not terribly far away, 318 meters. For once, we saw something that would surprise every pony but me. Trees!
What? I am used to seeing trees full of green. The wasteland is so foreign. It's nice to see something growing still.
They weren't as lush as I remember them being before, but at least they had leaves and a natural healthy glow to them. I was amazed that within less than 40 meters, we were in a forest. This was like Nyota sneaking right up to me and booping my nose.
This is so very strange. Perhaps we are deranged.
Gryffindor mused to the rest of us.
I agree. Everyone be on their guard.
Nyota declared, as I saw him drop into combat stance that was becoming familiar at this point. The tension grew as we crested the hill and saw the steel drop off towards the woodland edge. There had been a hill between our campsite and the woodland verge, but the single tree Alguacil roosted in for the night was not the only one near us. I marveled at the resilience of the whitetail woods as we approached. We could see sight of civilization ahead, as beams of golden light made their way through the pine needles and soft green maple leaves alongside with shapes of windows. That was certain to be where the ranger post was. Trotting ahead, we could make out a wooden watchtower next to two other buildings. One was a garage, a cheap, prefabricated one made out of cheap metal, completely dark without sign of occupation. It could have contained several vehicles, 5, maybe 6. The garage door as well as the side office to the building reflected the edge of my Pip-Book light crystal clear in the dark night. Several windows near the roof were broken and areas had rusted through to the point that there were holes in the building. Next to that, the wooden guard tower reminded me of the one back in the quarry, just with far sturdier and much more uniform wood. It even still had the white ranger station paint on it.
Wait, that is unnerving. That paint looks fresh. It's like it was done in the last week. There aren't chips falling off, and it doesn't look like it's starting to wear away.
I slowly approached the ranger station and found that what I thought was a wooden tower was in fact several odds-ons to what was likely the original steel outpost. The windows were intact, and I could make out something on the top that might have been a gun.
A gun? Is that a turret? There are lights on in the windows. Some ponies here. Let's see if they're friendly.
My friends stopped and hesitated. They all stood there for a bit as Alguacil spoke.
We should sneak up on them and investigate what's going on here.
Nyota, for once, nodded in agreement.
You know, you might be right. They could be.
I marched right up, and Boxbone trotted beside me when I felt a tripwire snap and floodlights flashed on.
Oh goddesses, my eyes! Are those turrets?
My thoughts were interrupted by steel cylinders with the words Mark II Anti-Tank written in white on them. A patchwork collection of spell matrices on each side of them encased in glossy-colored, smaller half-cylinders next to a tri-barreled minigun with the words 5,000 rounds, 5mm in bright white text under the barrel. There was a red dot sign to show where it was pointed, right at my chest, with an angry glare of death itself.
Please don't fire!
With both turrets aimed right at my chest, a shotgun popped out of one of the windows, joined on the other side by an M1 Grand Gala repeating rifle. I froze in place, gazing from one weapon pointed at me to the next, unable to take another breath or flinch a muscle at all.
Who goes there?
An older mare's voice called out to me.
Well, hi, I'm Wandering Sunrise and,
The mare, however, was going to have none of my old world introductions.
No. Are y'all raiders or are ya slavers or are...
Okay, fine, two can play at the interruptions game. I am the angel with a shotgun, and these are my friends!
I shouted back at the top of my lungs. Not sure if I sounded like a full-grown mare enraged, or a little filly trying to be heard.
You do realize that if they are raiders themselves, they're gonna blast you to bits.
Pink said, rolling over the EFS under my eyes that were marking 6 dots on it that were not my friends. All gray. Corner shifted next to me nervously in her box while I sensed my friends wanted to dash forward to shield us. The tension mounted in the air for a few moments. I felt sweat starting to form on my forehead as I stared down 2 chain guns, a shotgun, and a heavy rifle, all pointed at me. Time stretched out for every single heartbeat, sounding like a hammer stroke, only interrupted by the nervous shifting of corners inside her box. The air became as thick as peanut butter as I heard a talon behind us rubbing over a revolver. Then, with a relief, like walking up to find the bombs hadn't fallen, the double-barreled boomstick lifted to point towards the sky.
Well, I'll be a dragon's ant on an ice cream cone.
The mare declared exuberantly.
Weapons down and turn those turrets off. I can't believe it. Some pony that DJ Pone 3 talked about on the radio, visiting us on Heartwarming Eve.
Oh, dear goddesses, I can't believe that worked. Thank you so much, DJ Pone 3. I think I'd be full of lead right now without you.
The rickety steel door opened up to reveal a bright red-colored mare with a baby blue mane. She had a very smile across her face and motioned us forward.
Come on in, Pokey Dasher. Get our guests some plates set out.
She shouted back with a grimace.
I swear, boy, I'm going to show you the right way to treat guests, even if it kills me.
There was a commotion going on inside as our motley group approached and the mare let us in.
Hello, Wandering Sunrise. I'm Heartwarmer,
she declared with the glee of a fangirl. Alguacil was the last to come in. The mare followed in our wake. The house was decorated in hodgepodge display of ornaments and hoof-made tistle. The furniture looked all crude, but with a rustic charm, hoof-crafted. Nothing in here was from the old world, at least that I could point to and remember. All of it had been made by Hoof, rather poorly in some cases, although there was a definite improvement with each piece. You could almost sight a timeline between the overfloofed feather cushion couch to the uneven-legged coffee table to a dining table you might find in a hookah store for next to rock-bottom prices. The center of the room had an oak sapling in it, one that had been replanted into a pot there, covered in odd shapes of glass balls of various colors, and a few light bulbs that had been painted so they provided different colors. Inside, I could hear the generator desperately chugging to stay alive, and keeping the lights on. However, all of this paled in comparison to the smell of food. It might have been all canned, some of it even cooked in the can, but it was a veritable feast. There were carrots, broccoli, a few daffodils, a plate full of iguanas stewed on a stick,
Most unappetizing thing on the menu.
and a half a dozen other veggies lining on the table from end to end. I saw a set of 3 colts that could have been triplets. Each of them were stumping over each other in their haste, setting down cans of reheated food and a few large serving platters. One had a red coat and red mane, the second blue, and the third green, and all of them were right about my size, except Blank's. They bolted past us, and one of them, the blue one, ran smack dab into me, bowling me over in a heap. I yelped, and Nyota jumped in, but he had a smile on his face. He rolled around with the colt and ended up on his back. He held the colt up just out of reach of his smaller legs and tossed him lightly up a few inches, then caught him. Both were giggling gleefully, and I couldn't help but blankly stare in disbelief.
Nyota is being friendly? No, downright playful? What in this world? I could have sworn that zebra was stone cold all the time, and yet here he is playing with these colts like he was their dad.
Huey, Dewey, Louie, calm yourselves and go wash your hooves. We have guests and dinner is ready.
Their mother called in a tone that only a mother could do to her children. A flick of her blue mane to the side was all that she needed to get the 3 of them scrambling. Another colt, well older than me, but not quite a stallion, walked up next to her.
And Daffodil Dream, get those youthful legs moving for your mother and show some of them heartwarming spirit.
Daffodil Dream had a solid dark and sanguine coat and a soft green mane. Similar to my own coat, he blushed a deeper olive green that matched Quickstitch and rubbed his head with one hoof.
Aw, Mom, can we not embarrass me in front of the guests?
His whining, however, only got him a hard look and a growl from the motherly mare.
I swear I'm stuck with all colts and your dad did this on purpose. Show some manners. It is Heartwarming Eve.
With that, the triplets all dashed off, leaving me blinking at their sudden departure. Water splashed around the corner they disappeared, jostling and crying as I could picture them fighting over the faucets. Just as suddenly as they bolted off, they returned, skidding to a halt over the well-worn floorboards. The kids resumed playing an impromptu game of tag, with the dark sections being lava for the game. Daffodil worked to straighten up the table and make room for us. As the triplets were playing, Nyota took out some fresh fruits and a fresh potato to add to the feast. Chifondo started to work with the radio, but got almost nothing but barely intelligible static until Corners moved over. Took it under her box, then popped it back out. The reception was crystal clear now, and a heartwarming carol was playing. The song brought a tear to my eye and made my heart miss home. But this was all interrupted, and all I could do was stare with my jaw gapped when Nyota led the charge for everyone to gather and sing together.
All is bright round the forest, parents and child, gentle creatures, everyone. Home in Burrow so deep, home in their Burrow so deep. Silent night, starry night, snowfall makes the meadows white. Huddle close to keep family warm. Tomorrow's dawning brings heartwarming morn.
the sight. Dreams are born as the eyes fall closed. Tomorrow's gift is that no pony knows. Sleep in beautiful peace. Sleep in beautiful peace.
By the end of the song, all of us had joined in. Even I was shocked at the idea of singing heartwarming carols with any pony, considering the wasteland outside. Well, every pony had joined in with us, except for Dazzle.
You'd think that Griffin was a Wendigo or the Great Scourge.
He sat at the table, refusing to join in with the singing. We were off-key, especially the triplets, belting their hearts out with little care for pitch or harmony. With all of that distraction, I had to admit one thing. It was the most beautiful sound I had heard since we woke up in a pool with my new friends. All of our travels so far, and I had found pony magic that needed to be preserved.
See, Sunrise, this is worth keeping. Always and forever.
Pink echoed in my head as she finished singing the song as well. The radio continued onward with another carol, but we left it alone as quiet, gentle background noise, while moving to the table with a warmth inside our soul that hadn't been there before. We were quite a contrast amongst our hosts sitting at the table. They were not wearing barding. All of them looked relatively clean as well, probably provided by the ranger station's water supply. Nor did any of them have weapons on their person. Those were kept by the windows, in complete opposite of all of us. We were wearing armored barding for some sort. We also had a plateau of weapons, and our gear hadn't been set aside. We looked like we were ready to go right back into the wasteland at a moment's notice. Yet here, in this place, I had never felt so close to a group of ponies since the last Heartwarming I shared with my parents, Rainbow Rise and Shadow Window. I felt the warm tears rolling down my cheeks as days of pain poured from my body. Tears continued to stream, but I did nothing to alter them. I felt Nyota place a hoof on my shoulder, and I shook my head.
Really don't want to ruin the mood.
Sniffing a bit and wiping away a tear, I looked out the window to see a bright moon, managing to pierce the clouds, and it was the most beautiful sight that I had ever beheld.
Mom, Dad, I hope I make you proud when I see you again. I hope that all this pain and the secrets we uncover is truly worth it. I know you are still out there. And I pray to the goddesses that you see the same moon I see right now, and we feel the same way.
I picked at the food while Chifondo and Nyota dove in with a hearty appetite. Quickstitch noticed and nudged me.
So we're looking for some rocket exhausts and parts for a flying rocket. You wouldn't happen to think you might have that lying around? Or would it be in the maintenance shed?
I asked, expecting the answer to be a resounding no. The triplets and Corner had turned her box into a false table. They were eating off it while playing happily between chewing mouthfuls of canned vegetables and slurping soup loudly. Nyota was even joining in like he was a part of the false at heart. Daffodil spoke up.
We've done what we can to add extensions, farm, and defend this place. You know, except for that old shed.
He paused to munch on a preserved roll. I was surprised something like that could survive for 180 years, much less still be edible.
I guess whatever they preserve those with really works. Wait, what does that do to my insides?
He continued through a mouthful of bread.
I bet if you can get inside of that shed, you can find anything. We could never jimmy the lock, and it seems silly just to punch a hole in the wall, not knowing what's inside.
Heartwarmer nudged him hard, almost hard enough to push him off the bench.
Hey now, don't talk with your mouth full. You'll set a bad example for your siblings.
I giggled at the both of them until Heartworm glared at me. I realized that if she were my mother, I should have reasons to be scared of her with the fear of Nightmare Moon herself. I saw how playful the triplets were and tossed in one of my chalk boxes. Corner's eyes went wide as her box were suddenly being drawn on. The smell of markers hit the air, and I realized that wasn't a box full of chalk. It was Sharp-A Claw magic markers. Whatever they were drawing on her box wasn't ever gonna come out. It was causing her no end of distress, and knowing colds, it was likely to be covered in everything from flowers to phalluses. Neora lit up a smoke and took a long draw as I got up and stepped outside. I could hear the triplets playing behind me and the flirting starting between Chifundo and Heartwarmer.
I have shut that dialogue out of my mind permanently. You do not want to hear a zebra rhyming as he flirts with a MILF, talking back in a pure Applebuck country accent. Oh, dear goddesses, did I just call her a MILF? Seriously, Sunrise, would you... She is old enough to be your mom plus change. What is... wait, never mind, she isn't old enough to be... Am I old enough to be... where is this chain of thought going, and why is it derailing my life so hard? Seriously, get a grip! What if DJ Pwn 3 could hear this conversation in your head right now? I mean, how she finds out all her information, I wish I knew, but do you seriously think...
Oh, hi there. Am I interrupting?
A voice that was robotic and completely alien startled me out of my pondering. I jumped onto all four hooves and spun in the direction of the unfamiliar voice, my tail reaching for my shotgun.
Who? What?
My confusion was amplified as I saw a floating robot that was at eye level to me. A sprite bot. It had soft, transparent insect wings that were light pink, combined with a solid steel globe for a body. Those wings colors did not go with its metallic body, nor the cage across its visual receptors. A set of speakers had been mounted on top of it, along with the various sensor spikes that shot out of his back. I knew they were also provided a means to hover, similar to how a Pegasus can do it with little effort. Dad had worked on a few of these, always for ministry forces, never civilian or non-government.
Oh, hi. I'm Watcher. I'm the one who informed DJ Pwn 3 of your exploits.
The voice was robotic, and there was no way to tell if it was meant to be a male or female. I poked the sprite bot with my shotgun to make sure it was real.
You aren't going to shoot me, are you?
As long as you aren't shooting at me first, no. Watcher? So you aren't the sprite bot, are you?
Then, the realization hit me.
You've been spying on me, you stalker!
I growled at the sprite bot.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm not your enemy! I'm here to help.
The robot pleaded back as it hovered up and down.
I'm glad you made friends. You should keep it up, and hopefully make sure you have made the right friends.
The right friends? What is this robot talking about? They are my friends to choose, aren't they?
I gave it a hard stare, and then sat on my flanks.
I can't believe I'm talking to a sprite bot. Of all the random events in this last week, this one takes the cake.
Well, if I take the cake, then I would hate to see what happens when you meet something like Sandy Claus or Gexzilla.
Watcher saw the look in my eyes, and the sprite bot shied away.
You realize I'm on a mission from Sandy Claus to get some replacement rockets, and that Gexzilla stopped us from being able to get into the secret stable we found after I got blown up in a minefield and gutted by bark scorpions!
My shouting drew Alguacil out into the night, and I shrunk away from his gaze as he searched for me in the night, suddenly ashamed that I had interrupted their heart-swarming Eve dinner. I pointed a hoof at Watcher and turned back, only to see the sprite bot had vanished.
Oh, come on, how typical. My insanity has reached...
I could now, however, see the mist that its hover system kicked up in its rust to get away from me.
Nope, that was certainly a sprite bot, and it was here, and the thing called itself Watcher. I better leave this alone in front of that griffin, or his justice boner will kick in and have us hunting down the sprite bot instead of actually helping Sandy Claus. Did I just reference Alguacil's justice boner? Sunrise. Seriously, get a hold of yourself. Also, pick a gender and be attracted to one or the other, not everything that walks across Equestria that isn't ghoulified.
Sunrise, what was here?
Alguacil moved a talon to rub at the dust in the air.
A talking sprite bot, if I'm entirely honest. One that knows an awful lot about us.
I looked up, and Alguacil just snorted as I rhythm unintentionally.
The curse of Chifundo strikes again!
Explains DJ Palm 3, I suppose. Why are you out here?
He prodded me with a talon like it was a bad idea.
Come on, let's get over to the shed. See if we can get inside.
I changed the subject and started to march over to the maintenance garage. It was significantly larger than the ranger station, even with all the warmer family additions. Despite its size, I could see all the locks on the vehicle doors, as well as the side office door, bearing 3 separate keyhole mechanisms.
Guess they would have had the larger building for a house if they could have gotten in there.
Alguacil got to work on the locks, while I worked on a screwdriver, carving something against it and curling it with a second screwdriver.
I've got an idea that might help this situation quite a bit.
After several broken bobby pins, I stopped him from continuing the lockpicking and handed him the modified screwdriver, which had a curl to it now and was designed to push tumblers precisely in the way I thought locks needed to be turned.
Alguacil, try using this.
I stared at my pip-buck and saw that it was 1:37 a.m. now.
How long was I working on that screwdriver, and where had the idea to make it come from? Why was I...
Click! The first lock came open. Alguacil wasted no time getting to the second one, as his features softened, for once with a sense of accomplishment. He looked genuinely pleased with himself, and started to work on the next lock, which was, thankfully, much quicker. Connors walked up, rubbing her box with a wet cloth and growling.
Sunrise, why?
A rare thing to see the solid white filly outside her cubicle environment.
I turned my head to see the box had crude children's drawing in magic marker all over it, except for one drawing. That one wasn't stick ponies and crudely drawn shapes to make fool's games. It was an incredible detailed description of the group. Surprisingly well done for a foal using colored markers, on the cardboard underneath her metal armored slabs. To my eyes, it was one of the most beautiful things tonight. I looked up at Corners, who was quite distressed at the marker wouldn't come out.
I didn't think I had markers. I thought it was harmless chalk. But you know what? You deserve it. You know why? The skull in the minefield!
I shot back at the sound of the final lock click into place. Nyota and Quickstitch were trotting up, both snickering at us as I felt self-conscious for having held a grudge now.
Oh, Sunrise, you shouldn't bottle up your anger at anyone. Let it out. Especially for your friends.
Pink declared. Then she looked at the marker on the box.
Though this is hilarious.
Pink rolling in laughter across my vision, before my attention turned to the 2 stallions standing behind Corners who were hiding their snickering.
Are y'all done? We can get in here now.
Alguacil declared in a gruff irritation.
Great. The I'm angry all the time Griffin is back. Do you have another emotion? It's Heartwarming Eve for Luna's sake.
Sunrise, they're doing that looking at you, waiting for something to happen thingy.
Pink was playing around in my head, eager to get us to go inside, while Alguacil had already ducked in. Within, Nyota watched the door, looking around in the dim light of the clouded night sky, the moon being the only celestial body shining through to us. I switched on my pip-buck light and donned my helmet, marching in with the visor down to protect my eyes. Inside was a sight I was slowly getting used to. 2 dead pony skeletons.
I really don't want to get used to this sight.
One was on the ground, a unicorn with a hole through his skull right next to his horn. The other one was in a chair, a hole in his skull from the side, slumped down in a faded green office chair against an office desk. A 9mm pistol was cast carelessly to the floor, next to a long-since faded stain of red across the chair, concrete, and a nearby locker.
He killed himself. He killed the other pony in here, and then blew his brains out all over this place. What could have driven him to that?
My eyes dragged themselves away from the sight of the stallion skeleton in the chair to the computer terminal that was still running.
I knew they had built those to last, but it had been 2 centuries and still running? I could use that to get into the file from an admin lockout by making the file think the admin was that computer. I just have to get past the dead body. Quickstitch, could you...
I was fumbling with my words, unable to put a voice to it yet.
Get over it, say it! You know, if you don't say it, it will be just like Buddy. You need to address this!
Quickstitch stepped over to me and leaned up on the desk, expecting an answer. I hesitated until finally Corners nudged my rear right, where I had been hit with a broomstick 3 days earlier.
Can you please just move the skeleton so I can work?
I yelped out in surprise and turned to glare back at the box, who was giggling at me. Quickstitch rubbed the hoof against my head and ruffled my mane. He walked over to put 2 hoofs onto the chair. Rather than using his magic, he pushed the chair aside using his hooves in one smooth motion. It was like he was treating the skeleton with a kind of reverence that the dead deserved. Quickstitch used his horn to pick up the 9mm pistol and stow it away into a saddlebag. Alguacil walked over and leveled a glare down at Corners.
Go wait outside with Nyota.
Corners giggled all the way to the door as the box shuffled away. I took a swing at the air in Corners' direction.
I swear, I'm gonna deck you so hard!
I gritted my teeth and then turned back to the computer, carefully stepping around the bloodstain to get up to the terminal, and immediately my hooves hooked the pipbuck in, and I pushed the thought of dead ponies out of my head. The password was so simple, it was insulting. Ranger.
We're in a ranger station! Are you kidding me? Who comes up with these passwords? So far, I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, ranger, and magic word. Can we seriously analyze our security better?
There was one log entry dated 79 CE. It was a full audio and the maximum recording length for a single holotape. 11 minutes, 59 seconds. I clicked play on the tape and the terminal began to broadcast.
Well, we are down to 8 days worth of rations. I'm pretty sure at this point it's Hoof Hook. I mean, we've been locked in here for nearly a year, all because he lost the fracking key somewhere. Now our rations are down to 8 days, not to mention his accidental discharge of the anti-tank round into the Sand Scorcher. When he gets back from the shitter, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind and let him know exactly how I feel about it.
The tape was silent for another 33 more seconds. As I started to upload the encrypted file I had been locked out of into the terminal, then the voice kicked on again. Loud.
Hook! Listen here, I know you've been sneaking the extra rations. Where is that damn key?
There was the sound of a pistol cocking and a tense snort between them. 2 hooves stomped echoed in the room. Then, the sound of a charging pony. 2 gunshots echoed through the room. Then, the sound of violent struggle as the 2 ponies fought around the room, slamming into doors and lockers. From what we could hear, there was a whole lot of animosity, and every pony else had gathered around me to listen.
You stupid, wife-stealing, bucking idiot! We're in this because of you!
The first voice shouted, the sound of a hoof pommeling flesh, and someone bouncing their head off a locker echoed through the room.
I didn't steal your mare, and I didn't lose the key for the last time. It was Jolly who did that.
The second voice, I assumed was Hoofhook. The sound of another pistol shot rang out, followed immediately by a meaty impact as the slump of a body onto the floor hit the audio speakers. All I could do was stare at the terminal in disbelief as I heard the unnamed pony settle into the office chair. His ragged breathing dragged out over the holotape.
Well, that went worse than I expected. He punctured my shoulder with his horn. Damn idiot also lost the medical cabinet key too. The wound is deep. Probably going to get infected.
A long, deep sigh over the sound of a pistol cocking and a wasted round clattering to the floor.
Since I can't get any of our medical equipment, and I doubt I can keep this wound clean Or even patch it? Bastard had to get one last laugh, huh? Couldn't even let me starve to death. If you get this to my wife, tell that mare to go fuck herself with Luna's horn.
There was a gunshot, followed by the sound of the pistol clattering to the floor. We were at 4 minutes and 51 seconds mark, and it just kept going with nothing but silence and static.
He took his own life after killing his only friend. This can't be real. No way this is...
Sunrise, when ponies are pushed like that, with nowhere to go and nothing to do, even the slightest argument over food can become a mountain of differences. Don't let your friends become like these two friends.
I could feel the tiny hoof of the pink pony on my shoulder, like she was really there.
They were friends? How do you know?
Because, Sunrise, I am the pink one. I am not restricted by time or space like you are. Trust me, Pinkie Pie knows. They were good ponies once, till their friend betrayed them and went to grab Lemon Lime's wife. But that story you'll figure out later.
What do you mean?
A griffin claw shutting off the ambient noise from the holotape log interrupted my train of thought. I let out a sigh and hung my head.
Thank you, Alguacil. Get your mind off of it and focus on the task.
I heard him going through a locker while Quickstitch got a ladder from somewhere and was climbing onto the roof. I shook my head, refocusing before I started on the decryption of that locked file. Finally done uploading. Sure enough, the admin trick worked, and I was back to hacking away to find the correct password. I managed to reduce it to 2 words and 2 guesses left. There was no way I was gonna mess this up. I clicked 1. 6 out of 27 match. When I say password, I mean pass whole sentences. Clicked the second, and it read 9 out of 27. Locked out.
Are you freaking kidding me? There was no other choice. How in the goddesses am I supposed to... there was only one!
The audio speaker kicked on.
Voice print recognized. Decryption process initialized.
Left.
I looked around the room and saw the same level of confusion across all my companions' faces.
What in the wide grasp of Discord snake-scale brat?
Alguacil called out, haltering mid-locker check.
Hello. Subject 0, 1, 7. Stable 4, 3. Name Wandering Sunrise. It is good to hear from you. Decryption process underway. Stand by.
The scene displayed a single green bar with a time to complete at 22 minutes and a percentage amount of decryption.
Did that computer just recognize me? Did it just open because I spoke? And why only that time I said something? I don't... Subject 014? What designation is that? Am I...
Like an answer from the heavens. My pip-bug beeped and I looked at it. The ponygram on the screen showed me a new name at the top for the wearer. Experiment subject 043-014 Wandering Sunrise. Experiment status successful.
Experiment status? What experiment? Is that part of what I'm seeing in my dreams? What could it all possibly mean?
Sunrise, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Quickstitch asked, putting down a couple of bags of caps, SMG, and a few small boxes of bullets, labeled 357. Alguacil held up a set of keys labeled Ranger Maintenance Garage on them. 2 separate sets.
The keys were in here the whole time? Hook and Lemon had no reason to... They fought and died for nothing?
I forced the thought from my head with rapid shakes and took the keys Alguacil passed me. Neota had come in and motioned us behind a nearby locker. Something was on the other side. Out of sight. On the other side of the locker, just past where I could see, was a door with a long push bar handle. Alguacil placed the talon against the handle and pressed it open. On the other side was a preserved shop of true wonders, at least for my friends who stared in disbelief. I had to force floating memories back away from my mind as the shop reminded me of life before the stable. Several bright red toolboxes lined the walls with drawers pulled open and the lids propped up, as if mechanics long since dead would be back to grab a wrench at any moment. Gears, road wheels, slabs of metal, armor plates, all sort of components for modification, repair, and assembly of 3 distinctive vehicles were spread over the garage in the well-ordered chaos of a grease monkey's space. My face lit up as I recognized what the 3 vehicles were. Things I had dreamed of working on with my father one day. First was the Dingo all-terrain recon vehicle, a little 4-wheeler, 2-pony vehicle that could go incredibly fast, almost 80 kilometers per hour, if I remember right. Only a Pegasus could keep up with it. The second set of parts I recognized as belonging to a murky aura mobile bunker. That little number had 3 rubber wheels and a set of tracks at the rear. It was shaped like a horseshoe and designed for ponies to get on board from the rear and then disembark. It also could take a beating, as evidenced by the plates that were as thick as my forelimbs, which should have gone over the engine compartment in front. Alas, there were only parts and outer cases for such vehicles, and the 2 of them were not in the garage. The third bay had a vehicle as well, and I found myself slowly throttling towards it, staring wide-eyed in awe. A Sand Scorcher Mark II light assault tank! A 75mm cannon extended from the front, which is how I knew it was a Mark II. It had been developed mid-war to replace the Mark I with enough armor penetration that it could take on a medium or, with a lucky shot, a heavy tank. The side of the turret had a guided missile launcher that could retract inside for reloading. It would likely contain missiles under combat conditions.
Missiles I can use to make rocket exhausts once I get those warheads off. I'm not gonna hand Sandy Claus live missiles when I can use the explosives for something more productive. Not to mention, I don't want him having another accident with live missiles.
This Sand Scorcher wasn't moving though. The right side had a hole blown into it, right where the turret control fusion core would go. That meant that Spellmatrix was likely damaged too. They also needed a new tracks, and several road wheels were in the process of being replaced. The possibilities hit me, like a runaway train on the Appaloosa Express. I dashed up to the vehicle and started to jump all around in a blur. I wasn't sure how I was moving this fast. I just seemed to be looking at one piece, ranting out,
"A Sand Scorcher Mark II!"
Then I just appeared at the gun. It seems like I had just teleported in a blink of an eye, from the floor to the sitting on the barrel.
With a 75mm anti-tank infantry support cannon!
In the blink of an eye, I was next to the missile rack.
With anti-tank high-yield 202mm missile racks!
In a flash, my eyes were on the engine compartment.
And nearly 400 horsepower beating in those engines!
My squeal was so loud, I thought I might break a window before my lungs started to scream for air. My vision narrowed as blackness closed on the edge of my eyes, my head swimming as I was dimly aware I needed to breathe. A heartbeat before I stumbled and slumped over to the ground. Everything was fuzzy now, barely able to see anything.
Looks like some pony has discovered one of the Pinkie Pie powers. The squeal. Oh, now get ready. The hammer's gonna fall. Also remember to breathe in deep next time before you start to squeal.
What are you... Oh, dear goddess. What in Equestria's name was that? That hurt.
I could taste blood? My nose was leaking as I got to my hoofs. Corners were standing over me, my blood on her hoof, as her foreleg finished its slapping motion. Her other hoof was holding me by the collar.
There! She's awake now!
Sugar Cube declared and slid back under her box.
Okay, that's it!
I screamed out and put up my hooves.
You and me! Right now, Corners! Right here!
My screams of pure rage echoed off the walls and killed the reverberation of my squeal earlier. Corners laughed and got out from under her box, showing off her battle saddle and shaking her flanks from side to side mockingly.
What? Little stable pony don't know nothing. You little weak pipsqueak. I can knock you down with one good buck and keep you there. Stable dweeb.
Oh no, that is it! All those bullies, all those times I spent at school being humiliated for being small or lacking a cutie mark. I'll show you, stable pony!
I sized up Sugar Cube Corners now. She was physically bigger than me. Her muscles were much better developed. Not only that, but she clearly moved with a bit more confidence than I did. She knew what she was doing, and I did not care. Quickstitch walked up to me and started to address my nose, but I had none of it, and kept trying to push him away. Alguacil reached out and pulled him out of the way. Nyora piped up.
Hooves only. Take your weapons and barding off.
Gotta let this happen, Quickstitch. It's been a long time coming.
Alguacil declared, and moved him aside to make sure he was well clear of either of us. I shifted out of my barding, helmet, tossed my backpack, saddlebags, and shotgun to the ground. I could see where my fur had been covered with barding for several days, and what hadn't been.
I need a shower so bad. Ew. What is... never mind. Kicking Corner's butt for it!
There was a distinctively brighter green shine to it, and a lot less dirt. Staple suits were good at one thing, keeping dirt out, apparently. I flung the duster over the pile of my stuff, and turned my attention back to her.
Not taking off the boxing tape. I will probably need it for this.
Aw, what's the matter, stable dork? Cockatree's got your hooves? Or are you scared of me? You know I'm gonna beat your little stable butt. I might even toy with you while I'm at it.
The white foal declared.
Fuck you!
I charged with a rage-fueled scream as I brought down both Hoof where she had been, with all the fury of a nerd who had taken too much. I missed, but the concrete under my hoofs cracked, and several flakes of it flew up into the air. Corners, however, slammed into me and rolled us to the ground. I fought for control to get my flanks and hip over her own. Before I realized it didn't matter who was winning the grapple, I just had to smash her face in. I reared back and slammed the hoof forward. The impact into Corner's throat made her gasp for air and let go of me for a second. Now it was on. Blow after blow hammered into her ribs, face, eyes, shoulders, and then I got a lucky uppercut right to her nose. I felt it. The compression of nose bone and cartilage cracking and buckling. The sickening crunch only drew me to want more.
You want to act like Daring Dash, Jumpy Bean, and all the rest? I can put you in your place, just like I should have done to those stupid cults!
Cornus didn't respond, and ruled us over only to have my rear legs go in against her belly. I kicked as hard as I could, and found purchase in her nethers. The kick made Cornus whimper and bite her lip, which I took advantage of as our tumble came to a stop. I was on my back, but my forehoofs were still free, and that's all I needed to pummel her again and again. The final blow chipped the tooth and sending half of her molar out of her mouth.
You want to give me a cardboard cut?
I vented as a hoof slammed into her gut.
You want to hit me with a skull and make a landmine go off on me?
Another shot to her mouth.
You want to slap me so hard that it gives me a busted nose!
I screamed as I popped her already blackening eye again.
Let me break yours!
Both hooves bucked right into her snout as the final cry. That was my mistake. Both of Corner's forehoofs grabbed mine and pressed them together. Despite the pain, she pinned my forehoofs to the ground under me, and I raged out, feeling myself foaming at the mouth, wanting to break her hold and go at her some more.
Sunrise, stop! I give you win!
Corner shouted out. Her voice cracked and broke as she spoke. A single tear dropped, rolling off her cheek, and bounced off my own. It was like a hammer, breaking the glass of my rage.
What? I win?
It was then I saw the extent of the damage. I had bruised her throat in several places. Her cheeks were sporting several hoof-shaped bruises. A blackening eye was hammered down till it was nearly swollen shut. Her snout was turned at nearly 90 degrees angle, clearly broken and hard-snapped. Lastly, her lips were hanging on to a piece of tooth, held in by a single strain of root. She looked like a filly that had been hit with a cheese grater to the face. My mood softened and my life came into focus. The red rage that lined my eyes faded.
Sunrise, please. Just stop. Stop. I give. You win.
Corner said. I snorted back, only to feel more of her tears hitting my face. I realized it was blood mixed into tears. Blood I had drawn out. I had hurt my friend so badly that she was crying like a fallen need of her mother. I wanted to reach out and hug her, but found myself restrained, and moving only made her cry more.
Corners, I'm good. Let go. I'm good.
My words were broken and cracked as Pink came into view again. She looked like some pony had just shot her dog in front of her. She didn't need to speak. I understood. It was like a crash of reality mixed with enough guilt to cripple a pony.
I had done that? How had I done that? How could I have done that to my friend? Unless she's not my friend.
I slowly got up. I had expected the release of all my anger and frustration to feel good. Productive, even. Instead, it just felt like I'd crossed a line somewhere that shouldn't have been crossed. A line I couldn't trot back over and act like nothing happened. I walked over and Yoda helped me back into my stable partning and strapped my gear back on. There was a gleam in his eye. Even a happy spring to his step. For me, it just felt wrong.
Why are you so happy?
I looked at Nyota with what felt like a combination of raw anger and confusion at his happiness.
It's Heartwarming Eve, and I just got the best present ever. That stupid box pone got her comeuppance. I didn't even have to... Oh.
He paused and looked at me with a sort of empathy that I had never experienced before.
I know it's hard for you to understand, Sunrise, but that needed to happen. Even if it means Quick Stitch will have to work on corners, but if any pony was going to do that, it was best you do it.
He took a breath and raised my head so that I had to look him into the eye.
Sunrise, you doing it means that corners might finally straighten up and learn her lesson. Otherwise, she was on the path that might end up being a raider. It may feel awful right now, but you also showed that you've got some skills at skullbucking. Maybe enough to be worth teaching. But you will see what good comes out of this later.
The zebra explained, saying the most I had ever heard him talk in one day. Much less in a single minute.
Nyota, are you opening up to me?
I asked, nervously, with my head tilted curious at him. He nodded and pulled out a cigarette, which he lit. Then his hoof held up some stale caramel popcorn from a tin on the floor.
A bit. Maybe one day I'll tell you the whole story,
he said, and I took a bite of the caramel popcorn. It tasted awful. Like burnt old popcorn mixed with a chocolate bar that had started to mold.
This is terrible. Where did you get this?
He giggled.
I found it while the two of you were fighting. You're right, it's terrible. But it seemed appropriate to munch on while I watched my Heartwarming Eve entertainment.
He paused and popped another kernel into his mouth and chewed on it.
Go on. Go talk to Sugar Cube over there. I'm sure the Boxbone will want to talk about what just happened with you as well. Even if it was well-deserved. And funny as buck.
I glared at him, then looked to see Quickstitch glowing horn as he mended the bruises right before my eyes. Quickstitch moved between us and snorted.
The filly fight is over. Sunrise, get away from my patient.
I didn't know him well yet, but I could clearly see from his features that he was upset with both of us. Me, most of all, since he thought I was going to start the fight back up.
Sunrise, you became the bully. You can't.
Shut up, Pink. My parents would be embarrassed of me right now. I have to make this right. I don't care what you have to say, Pink. I know the fight is over. Quickstitch, move out of the way. I do not intend to fight anymore.
I pressed the hoof against his shoulder to move him out of the way. He relented and let me approach the white blood-stained filly. I slowly extended my hoof to her.
Truce?
Corners didn't grab onto my hoof. Instead, she leaped onto me, right into a tight hug, sobbing softly against my mane and smearing my coat and mane in her tears and a little bit of blood. The words were like a bomb diffusal gone perfect. The tension between us evaporated instantly, and I gave a soft sigh of relief as I held her still. My hoof started to stroke her head from ear to shoulder over and over again.
Shh, it's okay. Not gonna hurt you again. Are you alright with not acting out anymore?
She nodded into my coat, and I pressed my shoulder up so that Corner's face was clearly visible to Quickstitch. I looked around her neck and motioned him over.
Go on, patch her up. I'll keep her still and calm.
My assurances to Quickstitch paid off, as his horn glowed and more bruises started to fade away from Corner's face.
Magic is a clear miracle. I'm so glad we have some of that magical power with us now. I just hope we don't lose someone else because of my errors.
When he had finished, I set Corners back down and slid her box back over her.
I understand now. It's your safe space.
I gave a few pats to the box, and then walked over to the tank, trying to put what I have just done behind me. We had a mission to complete, and this was it.
Nyota, help me up here. We need to get inside and see if any of its missiles are still in there.
I didn't realize it, but the zebra was already next to me. Without saying a word, 2 hoofs hit my flanks and shoved me up over the edge of the tank body.
Damn you, why are you always so quiet?
If I hadn't recognized the hoof from being in my mouth so often, I would have squealed in protest. From there, it was easy to clamber up against the circular turret and pop open the hatch. The stale air hit me like a wall of death. There were no dead ponies inside, but it hadn't been disturbed in over a century. There were dozens of controls and switches, even a set of helmets you would expect for a tank crew. The vehicle had a clear gunner's seat, commander's communication panel, and the driver's seat was down in front along with the co-driver. Lastly, the majority of the space was dedicated to the ready arms rack and the breech of the gun for the loader. I clambered in, squeezing tightly into the interior, which was cramped even for me. I looked up through the hatch to see Nyota looking down at me. As my hoofs moved from the ladder to the floor, he seemed puzzled about how I could fit into there.
How do I get in? How did you manage to?
I looked back up and grinned.
Tankers were not selected because they were full-size stallions. Most of them were mares, and smaller ones at that.
I looked up at him and just got a frown.
Look, once I figure out what we need to fix this tank, we can maybe modify the insides to be more roomy. But for now, stay there, and I'll pass you any missiles I find.
Nyota snorted down at me.
Fine, but I don't like you being in there alone, kid.
I snorted back and stamped a hoof like Gifundo had done the night Buddy died. His face turned into pure confusion, and then a frustrated smile. He didn't know whether to laugh, scold me, or just shout. That much was written onto his face. I grinned and set to work, moving to check the ammo load. Near the gun breech were several unspent shells, as well as a full load of rounds on the ready racks around the breech. All of them pointed up at the top of the turret. A design that made sure that if they went off, they would shoot through the thinner top armor and exit the tank rather than exploding inside. There was a panel for where the missile launcher would go in and out of the turret for loading. In addition, another rack to the side with 3 missiles in it. 2 had labels with a steel beam being penetrated by an orange beam. One side of the penetration looked like it exploded outwards.
Armor-piercing anti-tank.
The third one, however, had a symbol on it that sets off warning bells in my head. Pink appeared in my vision again and made a
Whoa!
face and a sound at the top of her lungs.
What is it, Pink?
That is a mini mega spell based on the Balefire egg.
Oh, what? You mean design to?
Wipe out an entire building.
Mark IIs didn't normally get these. They were too valuable, and if one went off accidentally, you'd lose the entire recon platoon. Why is this? Never mind, let's get them out and disarm the warheads.
I took the first missile and wrapped my tail around it, placing it against my back and hefting it up to Nyota. The rest quickly followed, and I exited the tank. While the missile laid out on the concrete, I started to work.
What are you doing? Let's just give them to Sandy Claus and be done with it.
Quick Stitch declared.
And give him the explosives as well? He just needs the rocket propellant and the exhaust housings. Also, we just met him. Do you really want to give him explosives?
I asked as I took the first casing off. I saw the various wires and parts that engaged the warhead to the missile array.
Do you really think it's a good idea to have Sandy Claus able to mega spell anyone he considers naughty?
And do what with the explosives? Leave them here?
Quick Stitch shot back.
Of course not. We give them to the small child.
Nyota replied in the most deadpan voice I had ever heard.
Did he just say that statement dead serious? Give the explosives to a small child? Wait, did you just call me a small child? Seriously? I'm the one you're all following.
I looked at the missile and saw my reflection. The absurdity of the situation was so over the top that it distracted my hoof. I nearly hit the wrong wire!
Damn it, Nyota! I swear if you get us all killed!
I looked between Quick Stitch, to Alguacil, to Nyota, and then to Corners.
I swear if one of you makes me cut the wrong wire and we are all blown to bits, I'm going to get all of you back in the afterlife!
The room grew quiet, and there was only the sounds of my screwdriver, wrench, and wire cutters working away at the warhead. Finally, I got the first 2 anti-tank warheads off the missiles before moving on to the last one. This one had a different set of wires and panels. Upon flicking it open, my Pip-Boy clicked once. Then it clicked again, 10 seconds later.
Great, I have to work fast or risk exposure.
I worked as fast as I could with the unfamiliar device.
Is this what a magical fusion engineer goes through? No, they have proper ear and know exactly what they're doing.
I kept working, and was left with 11 red wires, all of them identical in every way, with the same serial numbers. The only way to know the difference would be with a manual, one I didn't have. I clipped the first one, and suddenly, the missile started beeping loudly. A bright red shining light on the top of the tip of it.
Oh, that's bad. Every pony, we've got a problem!
I shouted, and every pony stared at me in a rapidly growing panic as the beeping grew louder.
1, 2, 3.
I scooped up the 2 anti-tank warheads and their exhausted manifolds before dashing for the door.
4.
Nyota was pushing me from behind as Quickstitch was getting Corners moving when Alguacil grabbed the beeping missile and flew out of the window at top speed. It is hard to describe how he was doing it, but Alguacil was moving fast. Incredibly fast. Faster than I had seen most Pegasi fly. It looked like he was just taking an afternoon stroll, even though I knew he was blazing by at a breakneck speeds. He was already a speck through the window, before my eyes could even start to adjust to his speed.
5, 6, 7.
We all stared in horror and waited, unable to do anything now but pray.
8, 9.
There was a massive explosion, briefly turning the darkest night into the brightest day. Alguacil came crashing through the window he left. Nyota and Quickstitch dashed forward and caught the falling griffin in their hoofs. They all skidded across the concrete floor to a stop against a set of old tires. I ran to them, but Alguacil stood up, looking singed and a little worse for wear. He motioned for me to stop. When I really examined him, his face said his pride was more wounded than his body.
I almost made it. Damn. Getting too old for this.
He cursed and spat out some soot that was in his mouth. We checked on Alguacil, but he refused to let any of us take a good look under his armor. We all came to the conclusion that it was time to leave. I gathered up the missiles, tubes, and the warheads I had successfully disarmed, as well as any of the ammunition we could get. We all took one last look around, then headed out, locking the door behind us. Every pony believed that the garage was a bad luck charm, or some ill omen. We were eager to leave it behind, and all agreed to get out of there. On the way out, I stopped by the computer, gathering up my now decrypted file onto my pipbook for later. The name on my pipbook changed. Subject 043-014 Wandering Sunrise. Experiment status successful.
What had this file done? Why was I on here? Please, some ponies start making sense.
Once the place was locked back up, we headed off to find our rather talkative member, who hadn't joined us in the garage. Chifondo was still being flirted with, but he hopelessly had no idea he was being hit on. Heartwarming was so obvious, even I could see it.
Come on, Chifondo, at least own up to being a pretty stallion.
I explained what the explosion was, and that they shouldn't have any pony go into that area for a couple of days to let the radiation go away. Apparently, Alguacil had just leveled a few threes. Nothing serious. Heartwarming didn't seem to want to let us, or at least Chifondo, go. But with a heartfelt goodbye, we managed to pry ourselves away. We were on a Heartwarming Eve mission from the goddesses. We arrived back at Sandy Claus, who was more than grateful for the missiles and thanked us for the effort. In less than 10 minutes, I had his sleigh, as he called it, ready to rock back into the sky.
Sunrise, you're a good pony. And so is you, Chifundo. Quickstitch and Neonta, you don't think you are, but you made it to my good list.
He slowly turned to Alguacil and grumbled.
You don't, but you won't be getting coal in the regulator. Now, off and away!
He took off in a flash and was gone beyond our sight in less than a minute.
Never knew a sky carriage to move that fast. Then again, that MacGyver machine shouldn't exist.
The drink he gave me wore off quite suddenly. The feeling of exhilaration towards what should have been a day spent with family rushed to me. It was like reliving the entire night all at once. The family at the ranger station had played and sang. It was beautiful and brought tears to my eyes that something so pure could still be untouched by the wasteland. Now, as I looked around, I realized that just like every Heartwarming Eve, I spent it with my family. I was here with my family. We had eaten like a family, fought like one, made up like one, and still stuck together after it all. My eyes teared up, even as the call to sleep hit me like a freight train. Something truly magical had taken place tonight, and I may never know what it is, but I did know this. I would stay with these crazy creatures all around me. Even if we never found my parents, I had a family. Even if we did argue and hit each other sometimes, we would still come together and look out for each other. The world became hazy as fatigue caught up to all of us. I trotted tiredly back to the campsite and curled up in my sleeping bag, passing out before my head even hit the ground. When dawn came, we all found a small present lying in front of us. They were wrapped in reds, greens, and whites. Each one had our names on it, and they all contained a personal gift. I staggered back and was completely caught off guard. My emotions flooded with the ideas of Heartwarming Day. At the same time, there were so many questions about it that made it hard to believe it actually happened. I couldn't put it together. It felt like a fevered dream that shouldn't have occurred. Yet there in front of us were presents from Santa Claus. It was like waking up with a family I never knew I could have.
They are just that, aren't they?
Tears filled my eyes. Not ones of pain, anguish, or loss. These were of joy and belonging. These soft tears were welcomed.
The closest thing you have to family right now. It's only been a few weeks, and I would happily spend another Heartwarming with these ponies.
Even corners?
Pink teased at me as she leaned in for an answer.
Yes, even corners. I would say I would even take a bullet for her, despite the minefield yesterday.
Mine contained a small bag of 150 caps, a healing potion, a box of 5 perfectly preserved fresh donuts, and 2 steel apples? I recognized those 2 as fragmentation grenades. Lastly, it had a note.
You only get to keep one of those warheads.
I checked my pip book, and sure enough, there was only 1 warhead in my saddlebags. So, he was real? He really does exist in this wild wasteland of ours? And last night wasn't some mass dream after all. A brief glimmer of hope in our lives that we desperately needed.
Wait! That sand dog took explosives from me! I need those!
Level up progress. 97% of the way to level 5. Yes, you've been the same level for 3 chapters. Quest perk unlocked. Pinky Squeal. Anytime you become overly excited, distressed, or filled with terror, you can unleash an ear-splitting squeal that actually causes tangible damage. Make an endurance check. If successful, all glass within 50 yards of you shatters like a fragmentation grenade. In addition to this, all creatures within range must pass an endurance check themselves at a -3 penalty or suffer a -20 penalty to all actions for 5 rounds as their ears ring. Quest perk unlocked. Pinky's Dash. Anytime you are searching for something or become exceptionally excited, you can rapidly teleport from one place to another. This can only be done in situations in which your character is safe from potential harm. Any combat situation will negate this perk automatically.
But not from how far. Our journey so ruthless, I still bear the scars. And what matters ain't that the world saw its end, but what kind of life we will spend.
I'm trying to be better, but still miss the mark. And each time I save you, I'm left in the dark. No,
when you're in trouble, I'll be by your side. My love for you ain't gonna hide. Inside the fire keeps burning.
Still death is calling. The rivers run dry neath a blackened out sky, and all the dead trees are falling. we face, we'll seek, will judgment, our mercy, or grace. Decision is needed for those who survive, of whether you'll be left alive.
And all bloody work for a hope that we hold of past golden age and its story still told. And what sacred virtues we're able to heed to bring back to those who are in need.
The future is daunting. It's going to be shaped by the choices we make and those of the ghosts that are haunting.
And hope's worth preserving.
Both near